It's NFL Spin Move, guys. You tell us, you tell the people watching how the following headlines will impact the upcoming fantasy season. Let's start with some terrible news for the Ravens here on Sunday, as J.K. Dobbins has reportedly suffered a season-ending torn ACL injury. What's the fantasy impact on this team, Geoff?
I mean, for Baltimore just as a team and like for the rest of the fantasy pieces on Baltimore, I really don't think the impact it's like nothing. I mean, they have a pretty good depth at running back already in Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, a guy we've seen just slide right in there with Lamar Jackson, and everything is simple. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens offense, when it comes down to it, is simple. This isn't a team that's going to be slinging it downfield 60 times a game. And if they are, they're having a really bad day, because this is a team that ultimately wants to pound the ball. They've got another, inside the tackles guy and Gus Edwards coming right back behind J.K. Dobbins, and Justice Hill can certainly slot in a little bit as well. Ultimately, this offense is all about Lamar Jackson being able to just move the sticks with his feet and just take the offense off guard. None of that is going to change with Gus Edwards. Is it going to have an impact from fantasy? Sure. Gus Edwards bump him up a little bit, but all things considered, nothing is really going to change for Baltimore.
AJ, Gus Edwards here more than capable of taking over the starting duties and performing well in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I totally agree with Geoff here. Look, Lamar Jackson's going to get his rushing opportunities, his touches, regardless of who's, behind him in the backfield there. So I'm totally on board with Geoff. I don't think this changes anything here. And yes, Gus Edwards, 723 yards last year, 6 touchdowns. I would expect a lot more out of him this year. So from that standpoint, a huge bump for him. And really the other guy that I kind of like here is Tyson Williams. I think could see more passing opportunities, a few more targets, third down opportunities, that sort of thing. But yeah, ultimately it's the Lamar Jackson show. Gus Edwards, the clear beneficiary for the added touches.
AJ, the narrative around Jackson, though, that he needs to take like a significant step forward as a passer, do you feel that's overblown?
I do. I totally do. I think you move the sticks however you move the sticks. Now, obviously, if there's a lot of hits, it leads to injuries, and that's always the storyline, right, with why a guy can't run the ball. So I think, maybe he needs to play a little safer, slide once in a while here. But overall, I think they need to generate offense the way that they can best do that, and that's with him running the football.
Yeah, Geoff, and he's done it with some pretty middling receiving help over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lamar Jackson from a fantasy perspective really doesn't, we don't really care if he passes the ball more because, again, the one thing that the Dobbins injury might do, it might even lead to like a little bit more Lamar Jackson running. Not that he wasn't going to run a ton with Dobbins, but Dobbins was a little bit younger player, maybe a little bit more explosive. So you could say this is the injury might actually be good for Lamar Jackson because he's just going to, if anything, psychologically, he might even say, oh, I got to do more. But from a performance perspective for the Ravens, I actually am of the opinion that, until Lamar Jackson develops a little bit more of a pocket presence and just becomes a little bit better downfield passer, I don't really think that you're going to see this team take the next step. You don't really have to go back too far in history. I mean, we just don't see these rushing quarterbacks win championships. I mean, Colin Kaepernick is like the one guy who was able to get his team on a nice run there at San Francisco. They obviously didn't close the door, but could Lamar Jackson do that with the Ravens? Well, if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen the next couple of years because rushing quarterbacks, another thing we know with a guy like Cam Newton, they don't have a long shelf life. So I'm of the opinion that, until the Ravens develop this passing offense a little bit, they're probably going to be stuck in mud just in terms of where they go in the playoffs.
Okay, AJ, we got another injury here. Not as bad, though. We got Colts wide receiver T.Y. Hilton reportedly being evaluated for like an upper back or neck injury. His timetable has not yet been determined. If T.Y. misses some time, who gets a bump in DFS for the Colts at receiver?
Well, yeah, so update on that from Rotowire here. He is going to miss some games. Frank Wright wasn't really clear on that in terms of how many. But we know for sure it won't be week 1. Obviously, Michael Pittman becomes the number 1 guy, but he was going to get opportunities regardless, I think. For me, Paris Campbell is the more intriguing option to look at here. He'll likely be lining up in the slot, which could create some mismatches and some problems for opposing defenses given his speed, although injuries have been a concern for him in the past, so whether or not he can stay healthy is a big question mark for him. But as long as he does, I like the speed. I like the fact that he'll be lining up in the slot. And I think he's a guy that I'm going to target most as a fantasy uptick here in Indy with Hilton out however many games he's out.
Yeah, Geoff, I feel like there's not a ton of proven wide receiver talent behind Ty.
No, there isn't, obviously. I mean, if you look at their depth chart, I mean, it's a little bit, frightening, quite frankly, if you're a Colts fan. And also, I mean, their tight end depth really isn't thrilling either. So the pass catching role in the Colts is a concern right now. I don't mind the Paris Campbell call at all. I mean, I would not pay a high premium because, as AJ mentioned, Campbell has not really played much football the last 2 years, and he's really, really, really injury prone. The talent is there from his college days where he was like a hybrid wide receiver running back in a lot of ways as well. So I don't mind that at all. Take him in the late half of drafts. But for me, this is all about Michael Pittman. I like Michael Pittman as a sleeper before this T.Y. Hilton news. And I'm a little bit confounded why people aren't quite jumping on the train. His ADP really hasn't shot up much from this news. This is a player who, if you look at the last half of the Colts season, you saw a wide receiver one in waiting. This was their ex-receiver, the guy who made the big catches on the sidelines, was starting to take over, was starting to play good against number one cornerbacks. He's a big wide receiver as well. He can body players out. I think Michael Pittman is a wide receiver in waiting. I've thought that since basically he was drafted by the Colts. I really like the draft pick, and I feel like he's probably the best value at wide receiver right now. As you mentioned, where else are the targets going to go? I think that Michael Pittman right now is completely in the role of a potential league winner, especially with this T.Y. Hilton news. So a player I can't be higher on right now.
Geoff, this has been a preseason from hell for the Colts. How much does this hurt Carson Wentz, who's already literally physically hurting?
Yeah, and I mean, this does go into the Michael Pittman stuff too. The Colts O-line is now banged up. The quarterback situation, they lost Sam Ehlinger, their third stringer, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but my God, like with their injury, they need all the bodies they can get out there. I think this actually helps a guy like Michael Pittman because I think the Colts season is they're kind of on the precipice right now. They're like one more injury away here from potentially just folding at the knees, it feels like. And that's good for a guy like Pittman because it just means they're going to be behind more, throwing more. And even if it is Jacob Eason out there, that's fine. As long as we're getting the targets, I feel like all this news, it's not great for the Colts long term. It's good for Michael Pittman because now he doesn't have T.Y. and he's got a team who maybe isn't going to be as strong as we thought.
This kind of feels like Wentz may be a guy you want to steer clear of, AJ. Yay or nay?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And for me, I actually think Jonathan Taylor's stock goes up a little bit here. You've got one less target. If teams are double covering, Pittman here, do you really have other options? So they might have to go a little more run heavy than they were anticipating on top of the fact that Carson Wentz was injured. So I think Jonathan Taylor's stock actually benefits a little bit from this as well, as they could go a little bit more run heavy. As Geoff said, if they get behind in games, obviously that's not going to be the case, but they could also line Taylor up out wide as a receiving option. You mentioned kind of the weak wide receiver core. He's certainly capable of catching passes. We've seen him do that in the past. So for me, I like Jonathan Taylor's stock even more with this news.
Alrighty, AJ, who is, as we look ahead now to the NFL preseason, just wrapping up, like big picture here, what are your takeaways from the final week of the exhibition slate? Not the whole preseason, just the week 3.
Yeah, for me, the most intriguing thing that I saw at least was the 2 QB shuffle in San Francisco. We've seen this, several times over the years, and realistically, we have to wonder how long it's going to last, right? We had Taysom Hill, saw some success with it last year, but I kind of want to see what this carries over into week 1 in terms of, Jimmy G and the 49ers running backs, all of whom in DFS, I'm probably going to fade week 1 just because I want to know how much are we going to see Trey Lance? And those opportunities he gets, are they passing opportunities that he's taken away from Jimmy G? Are they going to have him run the ball, something like that, so where it's taken away from running back touches as well? So I was really intrigued by that, and I'm curious to see what that carries into the regular season. And has me kind of holding off on that 49ers offense until we know more.
I was going to say, I don't know if the chances of that actually working an entire season are very strong and positive.
Agreed. But we got to see what sort of touches there are for sure.
Yeah. Geoff, your biggest takeaway from the final week of the exhibition slate?
Yeah, the San Francisco offense definitely going to be intriguing. I mean, from a rushing perspective, there could be some big totals there, especially in weaker matchups. got Detroit week 1, by the way. My biggest takeaway is just the performance of these rookie QBs. I really feel like, again, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, even Zach Wilson, these guys, and Mac Jones too. I mean, these guys have all just been, they just look really good. They look ready to step in. And it's not just from a, real life perspective. Maybe their teams don't do that good, but like we're here talking on a fantasy show for obviously a DraftKings and the sports book and stuff like that. These are guys you need to pay attention to right off the bat in week 1 of DFS. Trevor Lawrence looked phenomenal. I think he's a guy who's going to run a little bit more than people think. Justin Fields, okay, maybe we don't see him week 1, but eventually he'll get in there. And when he does, I mean, again, he was running in the preseason. We just talked about Trey Lance. So for me, it's been all about the rookie QBs. It's as advertised. This is one of the strongest QB classes we've ever seen, in my opinion. Don't sleep on these guys from week 1. If they're out there, if they're starting, if they've got a good matchup and they're cheap, DraftKings wise, you're probably going to want to take a shot with him.
All Trevor Lawrence needed to know that he was the guy, that he was the true QB1.
Once he got the big mustache out of there, I mean, the confidence level just rose. The Gardner Minshew is just, his presence alone was just eating into the confidence. So good to see, Trevor Lawrence not have to deal with that shadow anymore.
Yeah, who wouldn't feel emotionally threatened by a man wearing jorts with a mustache who lives in an RV down by the river? Anywho, AJ, someone who impressed you in that preseason, the entire preseason, that you think could have a bigger impact in DFS than you expected before the preseason started?
Well, maybe I was just a little too high on Drew Lock being able to get the starting job in the Mile High City, but I wasn't sold on Teddy Bridgewater, being guaranteed the week 1 starting job. And I think he's done enough here to earn that. They named him the week 1 starter. I think that's well earned. And that's one where if the matchup is right, he'll be on a short leash. I think if he stumbles, we'll see Drew Lock sooner rather than later. But, week 1 against the Giants, this is a great matchup to use Teddy Bridgewater. Week 2 as well. So he was one player I didn't necessarily have in my, watch list for week 1 because I wasn't sure he was going to be the starter. And now that he has earned that job, I think he's a good play to utilize and probably have a low drafted percentage in my opinion.
And AJ, don't you feel like offensively, like the personnel, they collectively take a step forward here in like fantasy potential with Bridgewater under center compared to Locke?
Absolutely, yeah. And so, yeah, throughout the team, I think you can look more at their wide receivers, look more at their running backs here, because Bridgewater is more of an established commodity and has been around the league longer, and you kind of know what you're getting out of him.
All right, Geoff, someone who impressed you in the preseason that you think could have a bigger impact in DFS than you originally thought?
Yeah, I mean, let's go with 2 players. First of all, from this last week, Raheem Mostert in this San Francisco 49ers offense with Trey Lance opening up the field. This guy could just go absolutely nuts. And he may not even be like among the league leader in targets. Going to be a great DFS play in a lot of matchups, I think, especially week 1 against Detroit. The guy who really impressed me, though, for just taking like the conglomeration of the preseason, Corey Davis, the New York Jets. This guy was used in every single different situation in Zach Wilson's final lead-up start for the New York Jets. And again, we want to take usage clues and like guys snap counts. We look at things like snap counts, but Davis was so impressive from the fact that not only was he out there getting targets with Zach Wilson, but he was being moved around the field. He was being used on short passes. He was being used down the field. He was being used like a team would use their wide receiver 1. This is a former first-round overall draft pick. The Jets committed a lot of money to him. They have a deep receiving core, and we weren't really sure how this is going to work out, but I think the Jets showed their hand in week 2. I think Corey Davis is going to get a lot of targets this year. He is currently going very, very low. I mentioned Michael Pittman being maybe my favorite undervalued target. Corey Davis is easily 2, right behind Pittman. So Corey Davis, for me, was a big eye-opener during this preseason.
Yeah, he's looking to build off that momentum of last year with the Jets. The rare 4th-year breakout. Thanks for that answer there, Kenny. Now let's flip to the last question here. Is there someone you had high hopes for entering the preseason that didn't exactly perform as expected, Geoff?
Okay, well, I'm just dealing with that blow you just dealt me there for a sec. So just let me get my win back. Yeah. Look, this one is probably going to be obvious. I mean, hopefully I'm not stealing from AJ here, but Jamar Chase is like the obvious answer here. I mean, we got a guy taken in the top 10 of the draft. Not only do we have to deal with poor performance and drops and all this stuff, but we got off the field stuff now. This is just like a dumpster fire being thrown into another dumpster fire so far for the Cincinnati Bengals. He dropped his only screen pass from Joe Burrow in the preseason opener. Like the one pass, the Bengals just like, let's just get Joe Burrow one 1-yard pass out here. And Jamar Chase just shows up and drops the ball. Either Jamar Chase is currently just like playing the biggest rope-a-dope here, and his because I'm not the only one seeing this and knows this, and his draft value is going to fall. He's going to be like the steal because, look, he's a very young player. He's got elite talent. Or this is just going to be a dumpster fire all season long. We've got like another John Ross situation on our hands for the Bengals. So, take your pick. I'm of the opinion that we probably shouldn't read too much into this, but for right now, he's been the most disappointing player by far because I think most people expected this guy to just waltz into a number 1 wide receiver role for Cincy.
All right, how about you, AJ?
For me, some of it has to be controlled by expectations, and from that standpoint, Jordan Love, I think, was the most disappointing player in the preseason. Geoff mentioned all the rookie QBs that did great. I know Jordan Love's not necessarily in that same rookie class, but this most recent game, interception, fumble, yeah, the completion percentage was fine, 12 of 18, some decent yards, but this is a guy that they're saying is going to be the heir apparent. We're considering, getting rid of Rodgers because we're so high on Jordan Love, right? And he did not do enough, in my opinion, to warrant that, that level of confidence. And so it's very clear why the Packers needed Aaron Rodgers back. And honestly, from a fan standpoint of that team, I think it goes to show we should figure out a way to keep Aaron Rodgers long term.
100%.
I don't see it out of Jordan Love here.
Yeah.
Sign Jordy Nelson. Get Donald Driver. Let's start the GoFundMe, AJ.
They made huge.
I'm all on that train, but yeah, I was unimpressed by Jordan Love's preseason performance.
Yeah, they made the huge mistake weeks ago releasing Blake Bortles. So the future savior of their franchise is now out and about. But I agree with you. Jordan Love's preseason shows the Packers need to commit to Aaron Rodgers past 2021, AJ.